He did not expect anything strange to happen that night. It was an ordinary evening, quiet and forgettable, the kind that fades as soon as it ends. He sat alone in his room, scrolling through articles, half bored, half tired. One headline caught his attention. It spoke about a strange idea from physics, something called the observer effect. The article said that tiny particles behave differently when they are observed. When no one looks, they exist as possibilities. When someone measures them, they choose a form. He frowned. It sounded interesting, but also distant, like something that belonged only in labs and textbooks. He closed the page and leaned back, telling himself it did not matter, but the idea stayed, like a quiet echo that refused to fade. Later that night, as the room grew darker, he noticed his own breathing, not because he was trying to meditate, just because there was nothing else to focus on. In and out, slow, steady, unnoticed until now. As he watched his breath, something subtle changed. The room felt sharper, the silence felt thicker, almost alive. He stopped watching, the feeling faded. Curious, he watched again, and once more. The sense of presence returned. He laughed softly to himself. Probably just his imagination. The mind was good at playing tricks when it had nothing to do. Still, something felt different. He stood up and walked to the window, outside. A streetlight flickered in the distance, blinking without rhythm. He stared at it, lost in thought. Then, without warning, the light became steady. He blinked, looked away. The light flickered again. His heart beat faster. He focused on it once more. The flickering stopped. A chill ran through him. He told himself the obvious explanation. Old wiring, random timing, coincidence. Reality did not bend because someone was watching. And yet, a question rose quietly in his mind. What if observation was not passive? What if it was an action? He stepped back from the window, trying to shake the feeling, but the room no longer felt the same. He noticed sounds he had ignored before, the hum of electricity, the faint movement of air. It was as if the world had been waiting for his attention, and now that it had it, it refused to go back to sleep. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Thoughts moved through his mind like passing clouds, and for the first time, he noticed something unsettling. He could watch those thoughts. They came and went, but something stayed still, watching. If thoughts could be observed, then what was doing the observing? The question made his chest feel tight, because it hinted at something dangerous. If there was a watcher behind the thoughts, then maybe consciousness was not just a byproduct of the brain. Maybe it was something deeper. The idea frightened him, not because it sounded impossible, but because it felt familiar, like remembering something he had always known, as sleep finally pulled him under. One last thought surfaced. If reality changes when it is observed, and if consciousness is the observer, then maybe reality is not fixed at all. Maybe it responds. And somewhere between sleep and waking, he felt certain of one thing. Nothing would look the same again. The next morning, he woke with a strange feeling. Not fear, not excitement, but a quiet alertness, as if something inside him was watching from the moment his eyes opened. The memory of the flickering streetlight returned instantly. He tried to dismiss it. Daylight made everything seem less mysterious, and yet, the question remained. What if observation was not neutral? He decided not to tell anyone. Some ideas sounded foolish when spoken out loud, especially ones that suggested reality might listen. Instead, he chose to test it in silence, not with machines or measurements, but with attention. As he brushed his teeth, he watched every movement carefully. The sound of water, the feeling of the floor beneath his feet. Everything felt sharper, more real. Later, while walking outside, he noticed people in a new way. When he truly listened, without planning a response, conversations slowed down. People spoke more openly, as if they felt seen. He wondered if it was coincidence, or if attention itself changed the interaction. Throughout the day, he kept experimenting, watching his breath while waiting in line, observing sounds instead of judging them. Each time he became fully aware, the present moment felt thicker, almost like time itself was paying attention back. That night, curiosity pushed him further. He searched for answers, reading about quantum experiments where particles changed behavior when measured. Light acting like a wave or a particle depending on observation. Scientists called it strange. Some avoided deep explanations. Others admitted something fundamental was missing. He leaned back, troubled. If instruments changed outcomes, and instruments were guided by conscious observers, Then where did the effect truly begin? In the machine, or in the mind? He remembered a line he read somewhere: reality is not just observed, it is participated in. The thought refused to let go. Over the next few days, he noticed subtle shifts, moments where life seemed to respond faster than expected. When he focused fully on a task, distractions faded, time passed differently. When his attention drifted unconsciously, mistakes appeared, small frustrations followed. It was as if awareness carried weight. One evening, while sitting quietly, he tried something new. He watched his thoughts without following them. A worry appeared, then faded. A memory surfaced, then dissolved. He realized he did not have to push thoughts away. They left on their own when they were seen clearly. This startled him. If thoughts needed observation to stay alive, then awareness was not controlled by them, it was the other way around. A strange sense of freedom appeared, along with responsibility. Because if attention shaped experience, then most of life was lived unconsciously, shaped by habits, fears, and unexamined thoughts. That night, as he sat in silence, a deeper realization formed. The observer effect might not be limited to particles and experiments. It might be happening everywhere, all the time, in conversations, in emotions, in the quiet moments no one notices. And if that was true, then free will was not just about choices. It was about where awareness rests. He did not feel enlightened. He felt unsettled. Because once you see the power of observation, you can no longer pretend it does not matter. And somewhere deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. One quiet morning, he noticed something that changed everything. It did not arrive with noise or drama. It arrived gently, almost unnoticed. He was sitting still, watching his breath as he had done many times before. Thoughts moved through his mind as usual, plans, worries, memories. But this time, he did not follow them. Instead, he watched. A thought appeared, then disappeared. Another followed, then vanished as well. For the first time, he saw the gap between thoughts. A brief moment of silence, clear and open. The silence felt strange, not empty, but aware. A question rose naturally. If thoughts come and go, who is watching them? He felt a slight unease, as if he was standing at the edge of something vast. He searched his mind for the observer, but every answer turned into another thought, and each thought could also be observed. This confused him. The observer could not be a thought, because thoughts were being seen. It could not be a feeling, either, because feelings changed, and yet, something remained constant, awareness itself. The realization made his chest feel light and heavy at the same time. He remembered reading ancient teachings that said the same thing, that consciousness is not the mind, it is what knows the mind. Across cultures and centuries, people had pointed to this truth, not as belief, but as direct experience. He had always thought of consciousness as something produced by the brain, a side effect of neurons and chemistry. Now that idea felt incomplete. If awareness could observe the brain's activity, then how could it be only a product of it? The thought unsettled him. Throughout the day, the world felt different, not brighter, but closer. He noticed emotions rising without warning, then fading when seen clearly. Fear lost some of its grip, because it could be watched. Desire softened, because it was no longer unquestioned. Life did not stop, but it slowed, just enough for him to see it happening. At moments, he felt as if he was standing behind his own eyes, watching the body move, watching words form and leave his mouth. This frightened him at first. The sense of self he had always trusted felt thinner, if he was not his thoughts, and not his emotions. Then what was the I he had defended his whole life? That question followed him everywhere. Walking down the street, eating a meal, listening to others speak. Behind every experience, the watcher remained, silent, unchanging. That night, he lay awake, staring into the darkness. The world outside his window was quiet, but inside, something vast had opened. He realized something important. Observation was not something he did, it was something he was. And if consciousness was the true observer, then the observer effect was not just a scientific mystery, it was personal. Reality might not be shaped by what he thought, but by what he noticed. And for the first time, he understood why this knowledge had been hidden in plain sight. Because once you see the watcher behind the thoughts, you can never fully unsee it, and nothing, not even yourself, feels quite the same again. After noticing the watcher within, the world outside began to change in subtle ways. Not in dramatic events, but in meaning. Ordinary moments carried a strange weight, as if they were quietly trying to say something. He began to notice coincidences. At first, he ignored them. The mind was good at finding patterns, but they kept happening. A question would form in his thoughts, and later that day, someone would speak the answer without knowing. A book would fall open to a page he needed. A conversation would mirror something he had been thinking about in silence. None of it was impossible, yet taken together, it felt unlikely. Life started to feel less like a series of random events, and more like a conversation. When he paid full attention, the world seemed to respond faster. When he moved unconsciously, things felt dull and resistant. He did not feel in control, but he no longer felt separate. This unsettled him more than fear ever had. He wondered if attention was like a bridge, connecting inner awareness with outer reality. The more present he was, the clearer the connection felt. One evening he sat alone watching the sunset, the sky slowly changing colors. No desire to analyze it, just to watch, for a brief moment. There was no observer and no observed, only experience itself. The feeling passed quickly, but it left a deep impression. Later, emotions began to surface more strongly. Old fears, old regrets. Instead of pushing them away, he observed them, and something surprising happened. They softened. Pain did not vanish, but it stopped fighting back. He realized something important. Unseen emotions often shape life from the shadows. Once seen clearly, they lose some of their power. This understanding made him more careful. Where he placed attention mattered. Unconscious attention created suffering. Conscious attention created space. Relationships began to change when he listened fully. Without judgment, people felt closer, not because he gave advice, but because he was present. He started to sense that many conflicts were not about words, but about unseen awareness. Still, doubt lingered. Was he projecting meaning onto randomness, or was he finally seeing what had always been there? The question had no clear answer, but one thing felt certain. Life was no longer happening in front of him. It was happening with him, and the more deeply he observed, the more personal reality began to feel, as if it were not a cold machine, but a living process, responding, moment by moment, with every new insight. Something else began to fade, the comfort of not knowing. Awareness sharpened his experience, but it also stripped away old illusions. Things he once enjoyed without question now felt empty. Automatic habits lost their grip. Distractions no longer worked the way they used to. At first, he welcomed the clarity. Then the weight of it arrived. He noticed how often people lived without awareness, repeating the same thoughts, the same reactions, and he saw it in himself as well. Old fears resurfaced, not to harm him, but to be seen. The more he observed them, the more fragile they appeared, yet their presence was exhausting. There was no place to hide from his own mind anymore. He wondered if awareness came with a price, if seeing clearly meant losing comfort. Some nights, he longed for the simplicity of his old life, when questions did not follow him into silence. He asked himself a dangerous question. Was ignorance a form of peace? The thought scared him, because part of him knew the answer. Once awareness awakens, it does not sleep again. He felt caught between two worlds, the familiar past and an unknown future. Friends noticed the change. They said he seemed distant. He quieter. He wanted to explain, but words felt too small. How could he describe that reality no longer felt solid? That life seemed responsive rather than fixed. The fear deepened when he realized something else. If attention shapes experience, then much of his past suffering had been shaped unconsciously, not caused by fate alone, but by unnoticed thoughts and reactions. This realization carried guilt and responsibility. He was not ready to fully accept it. Some evenings, he tried to stop observing, to lose himself in noise, but awareness followed him, silent and patient, waiting. He understood now why many avoid looking too closely, because seeing truth means letting go of familiar stories, and those stories feel like safety. Standing alone with awareness felt exposed, as if there was nothing to protect him anymore. Yet beneath the fear, something stronger remained, a quiet honesty. He could not unsee what he had seen, and deep inside, he knew turning away would be a deeper kind of suffering. The fear did not disappear, but it no longer controlled him. He began to understand that awareness was not meant to make life smaller, it was meant to make it honest. There was no final answer waiting for him, no moment where everything became clear and permanent. Instead, there was a choice, moment by moment, to observe or to move unconsciously. He stopped trying to control reality, and focused instead on meeting it fully when thoughts appeared. He watched them when emotions rose. He allowed them to be seen. They moved more freely this way. Without resistance, life became simpler, not easier, but more real. He understood something subtle. The observer effect was not about forcing change, it was about presence. Reality did not need to be commanded. It responded naturally to attention, like a mirror reflecting what stood before it. He no longer felt separate from the world, but he did not feel merged with it either. There was relationship, a quiet participation. Each moment felt alive, not because it was perfect, but because it was noticed. He realized that consciousness might not exist inside reality. Reality might exist inside consciousness. The thought no longer frightened him, it grounded him. As days passed, nothing dramatic happened, and yet, everything felt different. He listened more, reacted less. Life felt less like a struggle, and more like a dialogue. In still moments, he felt the same awareness, watching, the same presence that had been there from the beginning, unchanging, patient. He understood now that enlightenment was not escape. It was intimacy with experience. The story does not end with certainty. It ends with an invitation. If observation shapes reality, if awareness changes experience, then the question is not what reality is. The question is, how are you observing your own life? Because the moment you truly notice, reality may begin to respond.